One day I was a banker, and the next morning I woke up president of this company. There wasn't really that moment that said, I can do this. My mindset the entire time was, I have to do this. I got a bucket in my hand and I'm pouring water out, but I am definitely drowning. I'm smiling the whole way. I'm not screaming or anything yet, but I am drowning. You have to hold on to that last breath, because that might be the breath that turns the entire business around.
My guest today spent nearly 2 decades in banking, working his way up to senior vice president, embedded in the Chester County, Pennsylvania business community. By all accounts, exactly where he was supposed to be forever. And then he went and bought an HVAC company. Now, that may sound like a detour, but it's actually the whole point, because what Eric Light did wasn't leave his career behind. He took everything he'd built, the foundation, the relationships, the trust, the understanding of how so many different types of businesses actually work, and he bet it all on something real, on a big vision, something to really serve his community at the next level. Something with vans and driveways and technicians in the field and customers who call you when things go wrong, and sometimes in the middle of the night. That leap from the comfort of a title to the uncertainty of ownership and to a great big vision and a bigger stage is exactly what we're here to talk about today. Eric Light, welcome to the bigger stage.
Thanks for having me.
So we met through a mutual contact in Pennsylvania, and I'll just say, and he was a guest on the show,
Okay.
and just said, "There's this guy Eric, and he is killing it right now. He was a banker for a lot of years, and then he bought an HVAC company, and he's applying everything, and he's just a great guy. He's got a great attitude about it, and everything that this person told me, it was John Durso.
That's right. Yeah. John's a great guy, and yeah, good
Yeah.
connector as well.
Yeah, and he recognized that you had the kind of story and the energy that I was looking for, because I'm really looking at people who have taken a big leap for a bigger vision and are building on something that may not seem like it strings together, but it actually does beautifully. So I'm just so grateful that you took some time to chat with me today about it.
Yeah.
And I've met you in person, and everything John says is true. So I'm excited for this conversation. But let me just say, let's get this out of the way right now, because your company's Precision. Give us the full name of the company.
Yeah, we're Precision Air Heating and Cooling. We are based in Westchester, Pennsylvania. So that's what I call our world headquarters. And the company's been here 33 years. So that's where it was started, and we're still continuing that and carrying the flag forward.
When was the moment that you thought HVAC is the way to go?
It took a little while to get to specifically HVAC, but I knew small business was where my head was at, and that was about 6 years ago. I started thinking about what my future looked like, and I was at a point in my career with banking, as you mentioned, and I said, what do I really want to do? And so that's when I started thinking about, I should really own my own business, and I've helped so many people in banking grow their business, start businesses. And I thought, it's my turn someday. And so it took a little bit of time and meeting with another gentleman who kind of had similar ideas to me to come up with the idea, and said, what do I really want to do? And I always loved the trades. When I was a banker, I always felt they were great, because the guys, the owners are connected every day. And then as I kind of fine tuned that vision, I thought, I want a business that's not going away. I want a business where service is the differentiator, and HVAC is I think one of the best trades you can be in, and for the future and for now, it's just a great place to be, challenging place, a humbling place, but a great place.
We'll get into what's humbling about it in a minute. So I'm going to put a pin on that and come back to it in a second. But I'm wondering, looking back on your banking days, I mean, what drew you to banking in the first place?
It's funny. I didn't know
happenstance.
Yeah, it somewhat was. It was somewhat planned, somewhat happenstance. I went to a small college called Susquehanna. Went to the business school there, and job opportunities presented themselves. And M&T Bank was a typical recruiter for Susquehanna there. And I thought, what better way to figure out what I want to do when I grow up, by going into a business that I get to see what everyone else does and how they do it. So I specifically chose banking because I was curious and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And so when I thought of banking, I thought, I'm going to meet everybody. I'm going to meet every type of business person there is. So I jumped at the opportunity, and didn't expect to be in it as long. I thought I would just be a stopgap for a short period of time, but honestly fell in love with it, enjoyed it. It was it was a fun time. It was a great ride.
Yeah, I mean, you could enjoy something for even a long period of time and still find that it's time to do something else, and you're a great example of that. I also think about industries like banking. Recently, I've been thinking about how great insurance companies are for the exposure that you get to so many different types of businesses and what you can learn.
Yes.
Um, so I'm wondering, like looking back on your years of experience in banking, what were some of the things that you learned about business from your clients and just observing how they were, conducting business and the challenges they were facing that are really helpful to you now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I saw was fear. It's scary. It's a scary thing to be a small business owner. You don't have a group around you. When you're not sleeping at night, unless you have a partner, you're on your own. And so making decisions like growth and hiring, extending credit, expansion, acquisition, those are really tough things to do because if they don't work out, there isn't an easy backup plan for small business owners. So I learned a lot about taking risk and calculated risk, and where when to invest and when to slow down. And so lot of lessons in that, and I saw that every day was what held companies back. Why did the guy with one truck not make it to 5, 10, 20, 30 trucks like my other client did in the same industry? And it was a lot of strategy, a lot of planning, but honestly it was a lot of fear. People were afraid and they were comfortable with what they had, and it was control. And so if they didn't have the blueprint to get there, a lot of small business owners never can grow. And so I saw that, and my goal as a banker was to help them see past that, take some risk, but calculated risk. There's silly risk, and then there's calculated risk. And in this case, a lot of times business owners were afraid to jump. And so the goal was if I could open their eyes a little bit and share the experiences that other companies had and how they made those jumps and how they bet on themselves. It was great. So that's a lot of what I did, was sharing not just the stories, but making introductions to other business owners that had successfully grown and scaled, and having them connect with others and really learn from them, and give them the confidence to say, hey, I do know what I'm doing. I have a great business. I do need to take the risk of growing, hiring, working on the business. As you always hear that, don't work in it, work on it, all those types of things.
I'm just curious. Take us inside the room. You're working with a customer. And sorry, we're not going to spend all of our time in banking because you're doing exciting things now. But what I'm most interested in is the thought process that's useful for our audience. How do you analyze a risk and decide whether well, sometimes you have to take a step, but the question is which path provides the smartest risk calculus? Like, how do you do the
Yeah.
analysis? What are
The,
some of the
the
questions
most
you use?
fundamental outcome is, what are the outcomes, good and bad, and just starting with that, the simplest layer. Because I used to say that I asked the questions to business owners that they already knew the answers to, and that's no different. It was, walk me through a worst case scenario. Let's look at the dollars and cents of it. If you hire that person and they don't work out, is this going to end the business, or is this just going to be a bruise for a little while? And so it's really just finding out worst case scenario, and then determining how bad it was. And I did that. I remember I got a call at 11, 12 o'clock at night on a Saturday night, and I answered the phone. They thought, oh, I was just going to leave a message. He'll call me on Sunday or Monday. But I saw the name, and it was a good client of mine, and he had a great opportunity in front of him. And I said, why are you calling me? What's keeping you up at night? And the reality was, he already knew the answer to that. It was a great investment opportunity. He had a very limited time to do it. And I said, look at the network of people around you. If you jump off this, there's going to be people to catch you, and you can win. I think the fear for him was, it was something really big to chew, and he hadn't chewed anything that big yet. And this is a guy who started his own business, grew it, but this was a lot of capital, and but what a stellar opportunity. I don't want to share it specifically because there's a little confidentiality in my banking career.
Just you and me.
Yeah.
Just you and me, Eric. No one's watching,
But he had an opportunity to acquire the assets of something that in the sports
Right.
world that a lot of people would value. And I said, let's stand back here for 1 second and say, who's your buyer? How many buyers are there? And let's look at your network. If you're looking to fund this or raise capital to do it, you don't need a bank. You have
Yeah.
friends. You have a lot of friends who will jump in on this. And so it's really looking at that. I said, worst case scenario, you're going to get your money back. That's really it. This isn't really, there's no downside to this. And so he made the jump, and it was successful. And that's a lot of times what we looked at. So a lot of times the risk and the fear of what the next decision is, the financial reality is much smaller than what's in your head. because you're
Mm.
playing out every worst piece. But the reality is, most of the time, it's unless it's something really big for your business, it's not going to hurt that bad. And I've seen it successful if you've planned and strategized and really spent some time thinking about it.
Now, we're going to publicize your personal phone number after this so that people can call you at 11 or 12 at night when they're wondering about
Yeah,
a risk. Is that okay? You've got a
course.
hotline, don't you?
You know what? I'm
Remember
used
the
to it. I've been conditioned for years.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even in my intro, I said, now you moved on to another business where people call you at all hours of the
It
night
is.
because,
I'm a glutton for punishment. After hours,
my
that's
you need a bot, now you just have a bot that
yeah.
sounds and looks exactly like
Yeah,
you.
I'm trying to
Just
replicate myself. That's I'm working a lot with Claude right now, so hopefully
I'm sure you
that's
are.
soon.
Yeah, yeah. Although, the real thing is always better. But, if it's 11 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
maybe a facsimile.
Well, honestly,
Uh,
it excites me when I get those phone calls and they're
yeah.
important. So I'm kind of I don't think I could sleep if I know somebody calls me at 11 o'clock and I know there's a reason for it. I'm like I might as well just. That's why I told him I'd rather take this now than try to figure out all night why you're calling me this late.
No, it's true. And, that someone would call you, it's sort of a sign of trust.
Yeah.
There's sort of I had an old mentor that taught me about the word confidence, the relationship between the word confidence and to confide.
Mm-hmm.
And, and they are interrelated. And so if someone's going to confide in you, they have confidence in you. So it's like the highest form of praise. So maybe there's a XY chart that shows the later they call, the higher that number is.
Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, high fear, high confidence.
Yeah.
That's your
During COVID,
yeah.
there was a lot.
Put,
There was 2 a.m. phone calls, and
oh, I'm sure. I'm
I took
sure.
those calls too because they weren't sleeping. That's for sure.
Now, tell me if I got this wrong, because I like to look at the person behind this and like the arc of your own journey, what you've learned that other people can learn from. And were you a football player or an athlete or something? Did I get that
I think
right?
saying an athlete is a bit of a stretch. I played football and ice hockey.
Okay.
I would say I was an average athlete at best, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
games and I tried and
But I
enjoyed.
was just imagining there's sort of I think any athlete or people who strive to win, there's a certain level of courage you have to develop and risk taking that you develop. I mean, how much of a natural risk taker were you early on in your life, and how has that changed over the years?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Like I remember when I was really young skiing, I would just bomb the slopes, no thought. We all have that at childhood. There's just no fear because we think we're invincible. And over time, it's kind of gone up and down. I had a family, and all of a sudden, my risk tolerance, dropped a lot, and I was really focused on taking care of things, and then you have some financial success, and that builds freedom. It's I have a small investment portfolio of real estate, and that's the reason I did that. Was I said I want to create a hedge because I want mentally to be able to take more risk on. And so I've been able to kind of go up and down. And I read a while ago, just a quote, I don't know where it came from, and it basically said entrepreneurs aren't risk takers because they know that they have a fallback plan because they're typically great workers, great employees as well if they need to be. So if things don't work out with something they're doing, they usually can find a job pretty quickly. And that was kind
Yeah.
of my mentality started moving towards that, saying, hey, I can add value to a lot of situations. So I can also take more risk because if things don't work out, I'll land somewhere. And having that confidence in yourself to say, like, I will land somewhere. I can add value to situations. People will hire me if I try to make this big jump and it doesn't pan out. Again, it's a
Yeah.
calculated risk. How much am I exposed, and what just style of living and things. Don't live outside your means so you can make these decisions. I spent a lot of years trying to be conservative and make choices financially so that if I did want to take a risk, I had more breathing room.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you create your own risk tolerance, I
Yes.
suppose, or risk portfolio, maybe, or
Yeah.
risk playground. I don't know. Risk profile. So yeah, I was going to say I relate to that. I've got a law license that I've been paying for years. That's my backup plan.
There you go.
So it's like I just go, well, your worst case scenario is not that bad.
Yep.
So awesome. All right. So you find this company now. Do you remember the moment when you first started? In that moment when you're like, oh, maybe I could do that, but the permission hasn't gone there. And then there's a moment where you switch and you're like, maybe I really could do this, or maybe I will do this. And do you remember that where you kind of went over that hump, or was it not like that for
It
you
wasn't
with
like
this
that.
business?
I was so set on this happening that I didn't really have a transition. I didn't have like a aha moment. I just it just was like going from seventh grade to eighth grade. It's like it just is something that has to happen, and you don't know what you're getting into, but you kind of do, and you just do it. So I never had that transition. I didn't quit my job and then buy this and then start. Like it was like one day I was a banker, and the next morning I woke up president of this company. And
Yeah.
so there wasn't really that moment that said I can do this, or my mindset the entire time was I have to do this. I have to do it emotionally. I have to do it personally. I have to test myself. I have to, prove to myself I can do this. And then, personally, I had the feeling of like, I don't have a choice. I have a family to support. So this has to work out. So I just need it to happen. And so I looked at it more of a next chapter than a new book. And so that's kind of the mentality. So, almost 4 years later, I look back and people say to me, like they ask that question, was there a transition? Was there an aha moment? How do you regret leaving banking? Are you happy you're in the new business? And the reality is, I'm like, this was just the trajectory. I just was moving from what I needed to do next, just like I did my career. And that's the way it kind of happened for me. Was this is just the natural progression. This wasn't a huge decision for me. It was I have to do this, so I just do it.
It sounds like the way your thought process was is that there was a decision, but it was way back here.
Yeah,
And then you just moved. Once you've made that decision, it didn't mean you acted on it fully. You put things in place strategically, and then when the day come, it's like it just a
it
switch
was just
because you
there. I was just moving.
it's
Exactly.
like, oh, it's time to move to the next
It's
thing.
time to be an HVAC guy, and then
Yeah.
whatever it takes, I just every day I'll figure that out.
And how did you know this was the one to buy?
I started building criteria, and the geographic was really important to me because, as you said, I grew up in this area. Precision actually serviced my house when I was in high school,
Oh,
and I really liked Chester County mainline market. I spent my life here, growing up here. My business career was in this market, so I felt that it's a great place to live. It's a great place to do business. They're really super people, and the network of people that I built over the years, I felt if I had any chance of being able to serve them, I had to be in their backyard. So when I really broke it down, there was only a few options, and then having to figure out which one fit, and then honestly, which one could I buy? And nothing was for sale. There was no company technically for sale. So I kind of had to find the right one that kind of hit the criteria of what needed to happen, so that I could come in and say I would like to buy your business, and they had some idea that this made sense for them to do it.
mm. What was the response initially?
A response was, you're not going to, really value me for what I'm worth, and you do you know my business, and do you know how we're doing, and all those kinds of things. Because Precision wasn't some explosive lightning bolt company that I purchased. It was mom and pop. It had been around for 30 years, and it was doing okay, but it was just kind of floating, and it was there. It was a lifestyle business. So those are tough businesses to purchase because they're not lighting the world on fire. The financials and projections and things that way, it's tougher because if you look backwards, it doesn't look very sexy. So that was it. And so I knew based on where it had been and what it had done that I thought it was a wonderful platform. But the seller was like, hey, do you really see the story behind this? And I don't think he thought initially that I knew what I was talking about that way, not in a negative way, but I think he thought, oh, once he looks under the hood here, he's not going to be so interested. And that wasn't the case.
What do you think was the most critical thing that you did that got him to see that you got it, that this was the right
I
thing
was
to
just
do?
being brutally honest. We said, hey, we know what we're going to see here. We know the challenges you faced. We know the basics of the industry, and so we know the potential here. And so we are willing to take on the risk of buying this business, and knowing that and hoping and planning to grow it. And so we're going to buy this business under the pretense that we have confidence to bet on ourselves to do this.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, a lot of times people undervalue what they have too because they're so in the weeds with things. So it can go both ways.
Yeah.
All right. So describe the first 90 days after you took the keys. The first, in a word, in a sentence, whatever comes to mind. I'm just
Yeah, I
curious.
don't know. The closest thing I can compare it to was like my wedding. You know, you,
Oh,
you get up in
okay.
the morning, and then all of a sudden you wake up the next morning and it's over, and you're like, and you don't even remember, like everything was a whirlwind, and
Just a complete
a
blur.
complete blur. And that's the first 90 days were. a complete immersion into a business that I didn't have a lot of knowledge in, and had a lot to accomplish very quickly, and really just had to just function as fast as I could as far as learning, managing, understanding, meeting the guys, and understanding what drove them. And so just a ton of information, and overwhelming. And because we're July, so that's the busiest month of the year in this area. So I came in at a really crazy time for the business, and had to really absorb a lot of information quickly, make decisions quickly, and do it with really limited fundamental knowledge. So it was hard. That was a humbling situation. I went in eyes wide open. I talked to a lot of business owners over the years about their transition, and them buying their business. And a great business owner that is a good friend of mine said, owning a business is like having a baby. You can't explain it until you've done it. And that
Mm.
is very true for what I experienced. I thought going in, like,
Yeah.
I got this. I understand what it's going to feel like. The first 90 days, I woke up in the middle of the night countless times saying, "What did I do? Like, where do I go next? What is happening here?" But also I learned more in 90 days about myself than I probably had in years.
Well, yeah. What'd you learn?
Uh, Grinding. I mean, football with summer practices and things, that's a grind, right? This was an emotional grind I'd never gone through. I thought I knew how to work hard, but it was nothing like I had to do with this. There was fear, there was anxiety, there was excitement, there were wins and losses, and I didn't sleep much. I would get up in the middle of the night thinking about stuff and just say, "Let me just attack it because I don't think I'm going back to sleep." And that was for months. So that grind, learning how to work. When I just spoke to a class of seniors at the local high school here, and I said, if you can grind, you can have success, because that is the fundamental. And I've seen it over and over again, in all different industries, all different people. The story of their grind is what is that's the real story behind it. You read biographies and autobiographies on people, and the grind of failing multiple times, that grind, I can't explain it. And that was humbling for me, because I thought I was good at things, I thought I knew how to work, and I woke up and saying, "Oh my gosh," like I didn't have a clue what really hard work meant, and how tough it was emotionally.
And I suppose having it, I mean, is one of the biggest. I mean, because I've owned several businesses now, and um, my first business I was actually like a painting franchise, and I even had employees, so
Yeah,
I was really in the deep
yeah,
end. And to me, just the overwhelm of all of the different types of things that you're responsible for,
yeah.
and then the human beings who are not like things there, and just all of that weight all at once. It's so much different than being than having a role at a company where it may be a lot, but it's fixed in a
Yeah, the
more
paycheck shows
fixed
up,
way.
every 2 weeks. That's
Right.
that's the thing. And
Right.
you work hard, you try to do well for the company you work for, but
Right.
you're not staying up at night hoping that the paycheck clears at the end of the
No.
pay period here. It's just not in your mind. You're thinking, "I'm doing my job, I'm doing right, I'll get paid." Like you said, when you're responsible for families upon families of people, that's a different mindset. That's a whole different burden.
Yeah. And I think too, the lack of control about what's going to happen on a daily basis, like right? Do you relate to that?
Oh,
Like you get
absolutely.
up
I
and
mean, painting business.
you think you have your day and you don't
You
have that
don't.
day.
No, and that's I hear that all the time, Eric. I would love to own my own business like you, because I'd love that freedom. And that I mean, there is something to that, but the reality of it is, it's a people business. You had a service people business. Things happen every day. Somebody doesn't show up in the morning. Somebody decides to leave early. Somebody quits in the middle of the day. Customers. We make mistakes. Customers react all differently to that. So I 100% agree with that. That you really, the day owns you, and someday you get to the point where you own the day. But that's not easy, and that takes some time. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So first year, I mean, you're not drowned, but
I'm drowning.
doesn't feel like
I'm drowning
you're
first year.
okay.
Yeah,
The
I
water,
will
you're
admit,
taking on water.
I'm taking on
Yeah.
water everywhere I look, and
But
winning some battles, and
yeah.
I got a bucket in my hand and I'm pouring water out. but I am definitely drowning. I'm smiling the whole way. I'm not, I'm not screaming or anything yet, but I am drowning.
Yeah.
The first year was very difficult.
But you're 4 years later, so you obviously didn't drown. So
No,
I guess
no.
yeah.
I
So
think
like,
sometimes you feel like you're drowning no matter where you are. I even said that today in a meeting I had. Uh, I'm 4 years into this, and I had this feeling like 4 years in, I'll feel like I got this. But no, even 4 years in, company's grown dramatically. I still feel every day I get out of bed a little bit scared, a lot scared sometimes, and the company's doing well, and we're hiring and we're growing, and all these right things are happening. But yeah, that feeling in the morning, that just a little bit of fear that says, what am I going to do today to make sure things go right and we win the day. That's there every morning. That's there Saturday and Sunday too.
yeah.
That doesn't go away on the weekends.
Yeah, no, it's 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so if you look, I mean, looking back now, like what are some of the wins that are in the last 4 years, the things that you accomplished that maybe you didn't even think about that you'd need to accomplish? Does that make sense? Like kind of insight driven wins.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing personally for me was I was never an operations guy. I'm not going to claim I am now. I'm far from it. But that was an area skill set that I ignored for years because in banking, you have really solid infrastructure. You have teams around you. So, I was relationship building, growth, trust, and that brought business along. And then I had teams around to execute and plan and price. And so I think the challenge for me the last couple of years was there wasn't people to look to make the final calls. I had resources around me, a business partner who's spectacular and who really helps in that space. But ultimately, I'm the president of the company. Ultimately, I have to make that final decision or that process or figure out, are we pricing things right? Are we executing right? Is our communication right? Is our marketing right? And that's a win for me, and that I never thought I'd be focusing on a lot of those things. I never thought I'd be stretching myself in the operations side of the business. And again, I'm not an operations guy. I will never claim to be, and that's still my weakness. But I've been able to accomplish things and move the company forward in profitability and growth and hiring in spaces that I never felt strength. So that's a win for me to see the company grow and say it was a team effort, but I went outside my comfort zone a lot to be able to accomplish some of these things.
Who have been some of the most impactful people for you in this process,
Yeah,
whether
I
they're
think it's
internal,
yeah,
external, you
external.
know?
I my business partner's been phenomenal. I mean, he's a pusher, and I wanted to be his partner, not just for the expertise that he brought, but I knew he would push me physically, emotionally to take myself, to go get in a truck and go run service calls and to do the part of the job that he knew I was uncomfortable with because, he wanted me to succeed, but he wanted me to grow. So definitely, yeah, he's been unbelievable during this and a good sounding board. And like I said, when I'm not sleeping at night, I know he isn't too, and that's comforting. My wife, unbelievably, because I disappeared from the family in order to do this and to put the time in I needed to really move this at some speed. She took the burden, and she's always been there, and she's always been running the household and the CEO of the home for sure. But it was a whole other level because I had to kind of disappear, and you know the business was one of my additional children for a while, working on kind of getting that balance back again. But she really took the baton on that, and that was impressive. And she knew, and we had talked conversations about that this was going to change our lives, and for positive and for negative. And that was one of the negatives was I knew this would be an enormous time commitment. And she jumped in, and there were tough times and tough days and tough weeks and tough weekends. But she just kept moving, and so that was phenomenal. And then there's some business people around me that from the bank that I was friendly with, and when they saw me take this leap, they jumped in too. As far as offering assistance, even competitors in this business reached out to me and said, "I'm proud of you for making the jump. I think you'll do a great job. I'm here for you." So I've been able to meet with competitors. They don't give away their secret sauce, but they're a really good sounding board and they're honest with what challenges they face. And that's been really helpful for me knowing that I'm not the only guy in this industry who's facing the same challenges they are. So it was really a positive feeling to have so many people around me say, "Eric, this is huge. I'm here to help. I'm here to be a part of it," and then become customers. I'm that was surprising to me. going from a completely different industry, I thought, I'm sure there'll be some people that support me, but the amount of people that have reached out, former coworkers and customers from the bank saying, I want you to do my HVAC. I know you know nothing about it, but I trust you and I trust the company you purchased to do right by me. And that was a really nice experience, and that felt really good.
Trust is the coin of the realm. I mean, that's just one more example of it. It's like, I trust you. I even, and now you do know a lot about HVAC. I mean, you're a quick study. I'm sure you have quite
Yeah,
a knowledge.
a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of sitting in classes, reading, listening, downloading as much as I could from technicians' heads, when they're
Yeah.
diagnosing things, reading the just the debriefs on all of our stuff. So, I'll say I'll never be a great HVAC technician. You don't want me to be in your house being your primary tech here, but I do have a decent understanding now of how things operate, well enough to operate the business and to understand really what my teams have to do every day. And I think that was my biggest focus, was I want to understand how they feel. I want to understand that what my team faces as a challenge every day. And that came quickly. And it was great to feel that
Mm.
and see that, because I had a ton of respect for the team after I did that. The sacrifices they make, being in an attic for hours at a time, crawling through crawl spaces that are just unbelievably disgusting to go get some, heat running again. That says a lot about someone who's willing to do that day in and day out, and honestly, don't cry about it.
You just answered the question I was getting to next, which was, what is it that most people don't realize about HVAC techs that they should know to respect the work that they do? It's
Yeah,
like crawling through hot.
oh,
What else? What other
the
things?
conditions they endure. I mean, being outside, and you think about an installation can take 8 hours or even longer. And you might have an attic that you're dealing with. It might be 100 degrees outside, and you're dealing with stuff. Not everything's perfect. You get defective equipment every so often. Your tool breaks. All different things can happen. Even with the most well planned and well executed installations, that's what you're dealing with. As a service tech, sometimes you're crawling through spaces you can barely fit through, and then customers can be tough. So you're dealing with that, and you're having someone hang over your shoulder the whole time, and you're sweating through your shirt. It's a tough thing. And you're dealing with homeowners with all different expectations, and you're trying to meet all those. So you really have to be you really have to be multifaceted to be successful in this. It's not about just turning the wrench in this business. You have to be able to communicate effectively. You have to be able to show people and explain and make eye contact and build trust in a matter of minutes. And so it's a tough job. You can't be a technician without the skills, the technical side, but you also are going to struggle if you don't have the personality side to it. And that's even with install, because again, you're going to be in someone's home for 8 hours. As a service tech, you're going to be there 1 or 2 hours. And by the end of that situation, that customer needs to feel good about what just happened. And that's hard. People aren't excited when the air conditioner breaks, right? Whether you're coming out to service or replace, no one wants somebody in their home taking care of these things, and nobody wants to be without heat or air conditioning. So you're coming into a situation where they're not happy. They're frustrated, and you're a hope for them, but you're also typically an expense too. So it's a real balance of building trust and having the skill set and communicating and making sure they understand what's happening, and making sure that honestly at the very end that customer says, I want to tell my friends and family how great experience this was.
Yeah. Yeah, you're also kind of an intruder, right? And until
Yeah.
you make them feel like, you're comfortable to be there. And yeah, the people skills it's hard to find both people skills and technical skills all in
It
one
is, it is,
sometimes.
and
Yeah.
you can train a lot of that stuff. You can build that, but it is hard for you to find that blend of person. So when you find them, you're real excited about it, because
Oh yeah.
it's got to be genuine. You can't make this stuff up. The person truly has to feel like they're helping others and believe in what they're doing for the customer, or it will come off that they're not genuine, and then the transparency and honesty isn't there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Now, you referred to it as global headquarters.
Yes, yes.
Tell me about that.
I laughed because when I was in a previous organization, it was a startup bank. We used to call it world headquarters, and we had this little
World.
office that was ratty, and it was a great place to start. It was a good story, and so when I came to Precision, I felt the same way. I said, man, this is like the garage of the tech startup companies. Like, this is the place we start, and the goal is it's always going to go up from here. So no, I joke, and I think I always will, that this is the world headquarters, and we just have this little office and little warehouse, and we're not big guys, as far as we don't have the the corner window office or anything here. We are in a little warehouse, and we're doing the best we can with what we got, and we have fun with it anyway.
I think that I just want to say, if I may, unsolicited, not feedback, but just perspective. What I love about World Headquarters is it really brings something that's authentic to you into it, which is a combination of tongue in cheek, and there's a sort of playfulness. There's some fun. You're kind of when you're networking, you're fun, you're high energy, you enjoy people. It's obvious. So a little tongue in cheek, but also something very, very real and authentic about a growth mindset
Yeah.
of just wanting to go bigger. So let's look at the future. Who knows, right? We
Yeah.
don't really know, but right now, just sitting here right now, what where do you see the future going, or where would you like to go? Where's
You
your
know,
frontier?
I have no end game for this. I want to grow, and I guess the simplest answer I tell people, they go, "Oh, are you building this to sell this? Are you going to sell this next year? You're going to keep this forever? Your kid's going to work in the business?" No, those are questions that you really can't answer. When I was in banking, I was just, "Are you guys going to sell?" And you can never answer that question fully, because someday somebody brings a check to you big enough that makes sense, that offsets the risk, and you say, "I really have to consider this." For this company, for this business, the mindset we have is until it's not fun anymore. And that's the simple answer, until it's not fun anymore. And what does that mean? It means that growth is no longer happening. It's too hard. It's things, that struggle becomes greater than what I see the value of what my time is. And so I don't have an end game, and I think we're far from that not being fun anymore situation. So I just look at this as a perpetual business. We run it that way. We everything we do is about running it the right way, transparency. We're not giving stuff away. My kids don't have cell phones in the business, that we pay for. None of that stuff. It is everything. And my parents got a water heater. They didn't get a discount. They paid full price, because I don't want excuses. I don't want to show the team that we're cutting deals and everything. We are building this business like a real business to sustain itself for growth, because the talent I have here needs to see there's opportunity in the future. And so I need to grow the business the right way. So I look at that as really my burden. It's to build this business and grow it so that my team and the talented people here can see a future here and say, "Hey, this place is going the right direction, so I'm going to stick around and see what happens." I learned that mentality when I was at a startup bank, and I saw what we did, and the growth was there. And so we all had the opportunities created because of the growth we all put together and developed, and the culture was right. So I look at this as the same journey. As I don't have an end date, I don't have an end game, I don't have by this date we do this. None of that stuff. It is, let's grow this thing and keep building it, and just keep going, and let's make strategic decisions that are good for the long term. That the nice thing about not having an investor group, just like the startup, when we were privately held, we weren't looking quarter to quarter. We were looking at what's best for the team, what's best for the company, what's best for the individuals, and let's make decisions based on a longevity plan, but still being disciplined. And that's really where we're at. So that's the goal right now. Do I see more companies in the mix? That's the hope. I want to have other trades ideally in the future. I want to see more precisions out there. I'm looking for that, but I don't have this straight model of, I want to acquire 5 more of these, roll them up, or anything. Now let's take the opportunities as they go. Let's grow some organic businesses. Let's have some fun.
Yeah. Great. How are you differentiating how do you want to be seen as different from, other competitors out
I
there?
guess the wording is world class. That's what I'm looking to do. And so it's, how do we build a better customer journey? How do we instill in the team to get that 5-star review every time we go into their home? It's really that. I make a lot of phone calls that companies of our size, the owner's not calling customers after installations and saying, "How was your experience?" When I have a salesperson go out to someone's home, I do a lot of follow-up calls on those. And I'm not calling them and saying, "What system do you want to buy now?" I'm calling and saying, "Did it feel good? Did that experience feel good?" Because that's what I'm going for. We're not the cheapest in the area. We're never going to be, and we're not the most expensive. But I really want the person to walk away and say, "Man, they had a great team, and man, what an experience from the first time I called till the execution of the install or the service visit. They really seem to care." And so that is really the focus, is just creating that world class customer experience that helps us differentiate, which allows for the reviews, which leads to online and social media recommendations, and that will continue to grow the business. Marketing is great, and advertising and all those things, but the reality is, I need to have the customer experience live up to what we're telling the customer.
All right. Well, one last question as we wrap up here. Talk to that younger entrepreneur who's made the leap, but they're going through that crucible period where they're starting to question what they did. Maybe it's their first big failure. What advice do you have for them?
I saw a ton of failure in my banking career, and I think that conditioned me for it to realize that that's part of the journey. I've had failures in my career. I've had failures in doing this. I've made a lot of mistakes, and there were a lot of nights I kept up thinking, "Man, I what did I do, and why, how did I let that happen?" I think failure is part of the learning. Watching other people fail was helpful for me. I think I got the cliff notes because I saw a lot of companies implode, and I saw things that were unforeseeable occur, and went through 2008 and saw what that did to companies. And so seeing that and experiencing that helped me accept that there's going to be challenges, there's going to be failures, there's going to be daily failures, and sometimes the whole thing's just not going to work out, and you just have to push through it. I've seen companies go on the brink of failure only to flip around and grow immensely. So that last breath, I think you have to hold on to that last breath, because that might be the breath that turns the entire business around. I've seen companies pivot unbelievably, just completely change their outlook and say, we're not that anymore, and wake up the next day as basically a new company. When it comes to that, that's the lesson you have to learn. You have to push through. And you hear the story of companies failing 3 or 4 times before they turn into the real thing, and that's the truth. And I saw that firsthand. And like I said, this company, when I came in, it was tough. I had people leaving and things changing faster than some days I could keep up with it. And you just keep swimming forward. And I kept coming in every morning saying, today's gonna be a better day. I'm going to learn more. I'm going to be better. And 4 years later, I'm thinking the same way. I don't know what's going to happen each day here, but I go, I'm stronger than I was yesterday, and I know more than I did yesterday, and I have better knowledge to act on, make better decisions. And so when you're at that really breaking point, that's the opportunity, I think, to push forward and just go even harder and close your eyes sometimes and say, I'm just going to do it anyway. And that can be the difference. I've seen it so many times, and a lot of days I felt like not coming into work early on here. I was you're just that scared sometimes, and you go, you know what? There's it's going to be a better day today, and if it means me jumping in an attic and being the installer with a lead, I'll be that guy. I will be the guy. If it's me going out and trying to fix a furnace for the first time, I'm going to do it, and I'll learn and I'll teach myself, and it is what it is. And you just have to move forward. So I think when things seem like they're hopeless, or when you think you can't push anymore, you can. And that was the grind. That was the grind for me. There was days that I got out of bed and said, I don't know that I'm good enough for this. And you get up the next morning and go, I made it through yesterday. Today's can't be that much harder. That's why I say the grind is really the thing that I've learned the most. It's the thing that I tell young people and entrepreneurs. You can do it if you're willing to work hard enough, because if you do that, doors will open, opportunities will present themselves, and you'll know sometimes when to pivot. You'll know sometimes, when to make a huge decision for the company and say, this is it. Either it's my last breath, so I'm going to take it. So
I think I want to point something out though, because there's some insight that you're saying grind, and you're also talking about learning at every single stage of this. Is you're working hard, but you're learning. I mean, you're always talking about curiosity. I can learn, I can do better, I can figure out something new, and that becomes a measure of success, even when other forms of success that may be sweeter, sweeter to the tongue or the wallet aren't coming. Find your own metric of success when
yes.
those things aren't quite happening, and learning is clearly one of the ones that you're practicing, because you keep talking about it.
It is absolutely that, and that's the thing you have to take away from every day, is you have to look at it and say, I'm better than I was yesterday, and that's a win. Because some days there aren't very many wins to look at. Some days financially things didn't go your way. You made a decision you shouldn't have. You committed to a job that ends up losing you money, and you've got to be able to absorb that and say, you know what, that was an expensive lesson, but it's one I'm never gonna have to learn again. And that in itself in business, I think, is a huge win, is taking those losses and saying, that's something that will continue that won't haunt the company going forward. I have to move on and roll forward. And that's hard for me. I hold on to mistakes a lot. I hold on to failing a lot. I used to say, I only play games I know I can win. Am I winning at this game? Yeah, I think yes, but have I fumbled the ball a heck of a lot over the last 4 years? Oh yeah, yeah. I've turned the ball over to the other team many times, and you know what? I hold on to that ball harder now than I ever did, and I still fumble. I still trip and fall, and still sometimes turn it over to the other team. But you know what? Like I said, my mind is in a different place that way, and so that is those mistakes, the learning you get from that, it is a win and it's transferable. The stuff I learned in banking, very transferable to this business, and that's people say, oh, there's such different industries. How do you transition from banking to HVAC? Business is business, customers are customers, and experience and is the same no matter what you do. So if those fundamentals stay the same, it's not that different. And I encourage business owners all the time, to stretch themselves. And I talk to a lot of professionals who say, Eric, I really want to do what you did. I want to jump out and try to do my own business. And I said, you can do it. You can do it. You can bet on yourself. But you just have to be prepared for what that brings. And as long as you're willing to do that, as long as you're understanding, you're going to fumble the ball, and that's going to be hard. That's something that, like I said, I encourage every day. Go out and try to stretch yourself. When people look at businesses and say, I want to start my own business, I tell them, you could do the jump out and quit your job, but you can also try a side hustle. Really give yourself the experience of trying to build something and understand it. If you're not willing to take the financial risk, or you can't, a lot of people can't afford to take the financial risk. I understand that. So, try something on the side, try a side hustle and see how you do, and test yourself. And you'll figure out who you are real quickly and say, is it something I can do? And is it something I can do on my own? I can't stress enough, having a business partner in this is a completely different journey and experience than if I would have done this solo. It would have been a very different feeling and a heck of a lot harder than what I did. Having someone in your corner, and not just your spouse, that's a really powerful thing.
And a real partner, someone you can confide in, someone you can talk about difficult things with,
Yes.
and protect the team from that,
Yeah. Yes.
and
Having a
keep it in the
brutally
bubble.
honest conversation.
Right,
That's
right.
I had many of those over the last 4 years. Yeah.
And it probably won't be the last
No,
either, right?
no, no. But I'm always looking over my shoulder for the next conversation. So
Get a better lock on that door,
yeah,
buddy.
exactly.
Listen, Eric, it's a delight. You're just such a high energy, thoughtful person and leader, and I think you're going to inspire some people out there. And so, thank you for taking the time to do
No,
it.
absolutely appreciate you having me on the show here, and I hope I get a couple of people excited. And like I said, I'm happy to have those conversations with people, and see what their journey looks like, and answer their questions. And like I said, I still have a long way to go. 4 years in, and things are working, but I'm excited for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and see how I feel and how I can look back at this experience then, because I think the perspective will be even
Mm,
that much more different.
absolutely. Now, if somebody's watching this and they're like, "I like this Eric guy. I need some HVAC, or I want to invite him to speak at our Chamber of Commerce or our networking group because he's got such great energy and great message." I don't know if you're open to that, but I have a feeling you might be.
Yeah.
Uh, where would they get in contact with you?
So, best way to get me would be email. My email is elight at precisionairhc.com. And LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm sure you've seen my LinkedIn posts. So a lot of people reach out to me that way. And as long as you don't reach out to me saying, "Hey, I'm trying to sell you services. I want to be your next marketing company." I do read each person who connects with me. And if you put a message in there saying that you saw me here, or you heard my story and you want to talk, I'm going to accept that invite, and I'm going to connect with you quickly, because my whole success in banking was people willing to give me a shot to have a conversation and share. And it's no different in this business now. I open the door as much as possible for people, because that's how the world works. And it served me well, and I'm only in the opportunity that I am now because of the people that let me in and open the door for me to have conversations, real ones.
As someone who sells services myself, it's like I found that people know that you want to sell something. So, but if you approach it with a genuine relationship building heart at the front end, you're just going to get so much better off. You're going to be way better off than if you're coming in going, "Oh, hey, can we connect? And can I sell you something?" I mean, it's just like, it's so,
That's it.
we're all overloaded. I mean, it's
Yep.
just
And it's
crazy.
like you said, it's expected. When I was in my my banking career phase, my whole goal was, how can I help this person? And it wasn't banking services. It was, who can I introduce them to? What is something that's going to help them move forward? What is a piece of advice that I heard from somebody else? Because I always joke, I'm not Tony Robbins. I'm not coming in here telling you stuff and raising you to the next level. My goal is to get you a little bit more excited about what you're doing, get a little bit more clarity around what you're doing, and really, like, ask the questions you already know the answers to. And it's that simple, and it's always been like that. That's what I came out with. I In 2008, I hit the wall. I was in banking at the worst possible time in many years, and I really thought about things and had an epiphany one morning. And I said, okay, no one needs banking services that bad right now. Most people that are asking for money, we can't give it to them. So I said, what can I fundamentally do? And I said, what is the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning? And it was meet honest, passionate, successful people. That is all you can do, Eric. So that was my goal from that point on. When somebody said, how can I help you? Who can I introduce you to? I said, I'm not looking for business. I'm looking for honest, passionate, successful people. And if I can find those people, they'll value what I do, they'll value relationships, and they'll want to eventually do business with me in some way, whether it's direct or indirect. And so that's what I lived by from 2008 on. It served me really well, and it is honest. It is how I feel. And so that's why, to this day, when somebody comes and says, you need to meet so and so, and they don't need HVAC, I don't care. I want to meet great people. And great people are how business happens, and they're great people are how great things in the community happen. So for me, honest, passionate, successful. That's the only criteria for me. It always will be, and it's been fun, going meeting people under that pretense.
A bonus, massive golden nugget to close us out. Perfect way to end. Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it. And I'm already looking forward to our next conversation.
Sounds good. Thanks again.